So our subject today, adding integers.
And it's kind of funny, like in elementary school, right, you learned adding before multiplication. Because adding's easier than multiplication, right? Well, sometimes. And this is one of those times when adding and subtracting negative numbers is a lot different and in a way harder than multiplying and dividing. With multiplying and dividing negative numbers, we just had to remember a couple of rules, right? A positive times a negative is a negative. A negative times a positive is a negative. But a negative times a negative is a positive. And if you remembered those rules, it was just like regular multiplying and dividing. This is very different. Okay? And it's different because technically a negative number is a subtraction. So sometimes when you think you're adding, you're actually going to be subtracting. Or when you think you're subtracting, you're actually going to be adding. Okay? So here's an example of that. If I have something like 15 plus negative 3. This looks like an addition problem, right? It looks like I'm adding these two numbers together. But it's not. This is actually a subtraction problem.
Oh my God.
Because whenever you see plus a negative, it actually means subtract. So if you see plus a negative, you subtract. So 15 plus negative 3 would be 15 minus 3, which would be 12. Okay?
Not negative 12?
Not negative 12, because it's
So you
positive
just-
15 minus 3.
So you just
Yeah.
use the, what is it? Negative or positive as the, no.
If you ever see plus a negative, it's the same thing as subtract.
So we've been doing
Okay.
that wrong.
No, if you've ever learned this before, you've probably learned it this way. Yeah. Now we're adding, right? Before we were multiplying and dividing, right? So if we were multiplying and we had a positive and a negative, we know the answer would have been negative. That doesn't work for these. And it doesn't work for a lot of reasons. Yeah.
So, I wish I had something bigger to show. But the way I do it is 15 plus minus 3.
Uh-huh.
I erase the plus.
Yeah.
And I just do that.
Right. Yeah, and that's very similar to how we did it here, right? It's like that positive just totally went away. Now, there are times, though, when this gets tricky. So I want to go over kind of some rules about adding integers, especially adding negative numbers. Okay? Because the rules are going to kind of help us. So the first thing is, number 1, if, and let's pretend we're just adding two numbers at a time. If both numbers have the same sign, you add the numbers together and keep the sign. So this is a rule that you've known forever for positive numbers. 3 plus 28 is 31. But it also applies for negative numbers. If I have negative 3 plus negative 28, negative 3 plus negative 28, they're the same sign. They're both negative. So I'm going to add the numbers together. 3 plus 28 is 31. And I'm going to keep the sign. So negative 3 plus negative 28 would be negative 31.
Okay.
Okay. Anytime I have the same sign on both numbers when I'm adding, I add the numbers
Add the number and it leaves the
and
same.
then keep
Okay.
the sign. So since they're both negative, I have a negative 31. There's other ways to think about this. I could think about this problem along a number line. So on a number line, right, if I have 0 here, and I started at negative 3, remember how I said plus a negative is the same as subtracting? So I'm really going to subtract 28 from negative 3. What does it mean to subtract on a number line? Does anyone know? Which direction do we go?
You go up.
If we're subtracting, do we go up?
You go down.
If we're subtracting, we go down? Let's think about it with a simple problem like 5 minus 3. If I started at 5, right? So if I started at 5, and I wanted to subtract 3, which direction would I go on the number?
Down.
Down. So subtracting is going down. Right? This is another way of thinking about these types of problems. So negative 3, subtracting 28. I'm going 28 steps further. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28. The number line even ran out. So what number would I be at way down here?
You would be at negative 28.
Well, I wouldn't because I didn't start at 0.
Oh,
But I would be at negative 28 and then
so like
3 further.
it would be
Exactly.
25.
It would be negative 31.
Wait.
Negative 28 would be right here. Because negative numbers work kind of the opposite of positive numbers, right? Where the smaller numbers are further to the right on the number.
Basically, you just add, if they're both negatives, you just add them together and then make
And
that
then make
answer a negative.
Exactly. Right. And that's the easier way of thinking about it. But the number line kind of shows you why it works, right? It's like I'm getting more negative. So I'm adding more to my quantity.
So in addition, a negative plus a negative equals a negative.
So in addition, a negative plus a negative equals a negative.
Is that the same as subtraction?
Well, so yeah, subtraction, we're not going to actually deal with subtraction today. Technically we are, but I'm going to just talk about adding.
In my in the old school, what they would do is they would put a number line on the wall,
Mm-hmm.
and then they were adding to it, and there's like, wait, there's no numbers that go past 0. Like, yeah, there's more numbers. I'm
Right.
kidding.
When you first learned about negative numbers, right? Okay, so if both numbers have the same sign, add the numbers, keep the sign. So 2 negatives, right? We're going to add those numbers and have a negative answer. So let's do one more example. What would we have if we had negative 5 plus negative 12? Both numbers are negative, so I'm going to add 12 plus 5 is 17, and then the answer is negative because both numbers are negative 17.
Okay, so you add 12 plus 5, that's 17, then you add the negative 5. Also, basically what I did is I put plus, so addition.
If it helps you, you can actually do that off to the side, right? You can totally ignore the negatives and just say 12 plus 5 is 17. Oh, but I remember that both numbers were negative. My answer is
Yeah, okay. So if it's both with positive, then
right. Yeah, and that's the sort of thing that you've always known how to do, is adding 2 positive numbers together. Well, maybe not always, but you've known it for a long time. Number 2, if the numbers have opposite signs, you ignore the sign, you subtract the numbers, and then you you put the sign of the bigger number on your answer. And again, some of this you already know how to do, right? If I had 15 plus negative 6, right? I'm just simply subtracting 6 from 15. 15 plus negative 6 is 15 minus 6, which is, what is it? Yeah? 9. You wait until after. 9. So this would be 9. But if it's the other way around, if I have negative 15 plus 6, I actually do the same thing. Do you guys see that these two numbers have opposite signs? Opposite signs?
Yeah.
So I'm going to ignore the signs for a second. I'm going to subtract those two numbers. There's only one way to subtract them, which is this. 15 minus 6. You always are going to subtract the smaller number. Right? That's the only way to subtract. You can't really do 6 minus 15. It doesn't really exist.
9.
So 15 minus 6 is 9, but the answer is not 9, because then we put the sign of the bigger number on the answer. Which number here is bigger? 15. So we put that sign on that answer.
Wait, no.
And it doesn't matter which way we write these. Negative 6 plus 15 is going to be the same thing as 15 plus negative 6. So we subtract those numbers, and is it positive or negative?
It's negative.
Look at which one's
No,
bigger.
on the positive.
Why is it positive?
Because the bigger number, we use that sign, and 15 is greater than 6.
Right. What if I had this one? 6 plus negative 15.
It would be 15 minus 6,
Alright, so it's still going to be 9,
but it would be negative.
but now it's negative y.
Because, you
Bigger
can't,
numbers.
if the smaller number is,
So there's so many different ways to write, like basically the same problem. But this is kind of an important thing to remember, right? If we have opposite signs, our answer has the same sign as the bigger number. Right? And when we say bigger, we just mean the value, the magnitude of that number is bigger. Because negative 15 is not bigger than 6, but 15 is bigger than 6. Right? And if we're adding 0, how do we add 0?
what? 90. 0.
Like, what if I had 15 plus 0? What's that?
15.
What about negative 15 plus 0?
Negative 15.
Yeah. So if we're adding 0, nothing changes. Let's do some examples. And now I'm going to mix these two rules together. Alright, so some of them are going to have the same sign, some of them are going to have different signs. So let's do something like 7 plus negative 5, negative 11 plus 1, 6 5 plus negative 3 and negative 2 plus negative 7. Alright. So several examples. Let's just look at all the examples together. Which ones are we going to add the numbers? Which ones are we going to subtract them?
The first one,
How do we know?
we're going to subtract.
So do you see how they have a positive and a negative? So we're going to subtract.
Yeah.
Because we have opposite signs, right? Okay, how about this one?
We're going to subtract.
Subtract. How about this one?
Subtract.
How about this one?
Add.
Because?
Because they have the same sign.
And how about this one?
Add.
Because they have the same sign. Right. So the first example, what did we say we were going to do here?
So
Okay.
7 take away 5
So
is
7
2.
minus 5 is 2. Is our answer 2?
No. Yeah.
Yeah.
2.
Why is it not negative 2?
Because we use the negative.
Sure. We used the negative already over here. We know that our answer is going to have the same sign as the bigger number. Right? 7 is bigger. 7 is bigger, so there's like positives left over. Again, you could think about this on the number line. Right? Here's 0. If we start at 7, 5, 6, 7, and we subtract 5, we're still going to be above 0, right? Because it's not enough. 5 is not enough to get us past 0. Okay. All right, how about negative 11 and 20? Negative 11 plus 20. Okay, so negative 11 plus 20. So we do 20 minus 11, just like you guys said, is 9. And is our answer 9 or is it negative 9? Why is it positive?
Because the bigger number, 20, is.
Exactly. Okay. So how about 6 plus negative 10?
It would be subtracting 6 from 10,
Okay.
which is 4. But since 10 is the bigger number and it's a negative, then it's negative.
Right? 10 is bigger, it's negative. So our answer is going to be negative.
Okay.
Let's think about it on the number line.
Yeah. And
Okay, but I think for everyone, because I'm sure a lot of people have questions. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
Still on the camera. I think so. Barely. So if we're at 10, oh, I didn't even need to go that far. We're not at 10, we're at 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And we're going to go down 10. Because remember, adding a negative is subtracting. If I'm going to go down 10, am I going to pass 0? If I'm at 6 and I go down 10?
No.
Think about it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5,
Yeah.
6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I am totally going to pass 0, right? So I'm going to be in negative territory. And again, this is a different way of thinking about it. Right? These two ways of thinking about it are related, but they are different.
Personally, the other way is easier and sometimes
I like this way of thinking about it too. I like the non-number line way of thinking about it.
because like every time you do like
Yeah. But what does help me is to think about the number line sometimes. If you're ever confused, like, is this going to be positive or negative? Think about where your numbers are on the number line. And think about where you're going and which direction you're going. Because that will help. All right. Negative 5 and negative 3. Negative 5 and negative 3.
so we're going to add it because they have
We're going to add 5 and 3, which is 8. And we're going to
it put a negative because in addition
keep
a
the
negative and
sign.
a negative plus a negative equals a negative.
Right.
Only in addition. Well, we don't know if that's subtraction.
Okay. How about negative 2 and negative 17?
so
So we're going to add because they have
So
the
what's
same
17 plus 2?
is 9.
And we're going to keep the sign, so we have
Negative 19.
negative 9. Good work, guys. Beautiful. Beautiful, beautiful. Let's do some more practice.
So we have